Welcome to the Provisionist Perspective. I'm Drew.
And I'm Eric.
And this is our first live episode that we've done in what feels like ages.
Forever.
I'm excited about this. It's going to be a bit of a riff episode. It might be a little bit of a serious episode because we're just going to talk about some reflections that we have on 2020 and forward, and so on. So it looks like Nick is tuning in over here. Nick Quint with the New Testament Theologist. He's got a YouTube channel over there you can check out. And welcome everyone.
Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you to our patrons. We really appreciate you. I've been really enjoying our interaction over on the Discord. That's been good fun. The stuff that we're getting into there is great. And so yeah, we'd love for you to join the team and make this thing better. Even if you don't join the patron, even if you don't join the Discord, that's fine. But we'd love to have you as a part of our team making this thing better. And we've been working on some things in the background. There's some exciting stuff coming, and when we can tell you more about it, we will. It's been taking a little bit of our free theology time for our theology nerd stuff. It's been taking a little bit of that time. This exciting stuff that we're helping with in the background, and when we can share that, we will.
It sounds really fancy to call ourselves consultants, that we've been consulting.
but it is, though. That's what we've been doing.
I've always wanted to be a consultant. Some of my favorite TV shows were like Monk and Psych, where they're like consultants for the police. So I like the idea of being a consultant. Now, so we'll share probably a number of prayer requests that you guys can, or prayer points by way of, conversing about what's going on. But on the Discord, we do have like a prayer channel that different people share and stuff on there. So that's good, good fun and stuff. And so it's a good group. We appreciate everybody, and we appreciate all of you.
Yeah, some of my best friends are. Now we're consultants. We're some of your best friends. I think that's what that means.
Yeah. But yeah, Eric, do you want to start with some of your own kind of musings or recent event stuff? Basically, we're thinking about kind of like what God's been up to, what is he doing, the challenges of facing I feel like I need a code word for this. We're going to call them.
We're going to call them code. Otherwise, this is going to get yanked while we're talking.
Yeah. We're gonna call it these trying times from 2020 onward, and then we're gonna have to call it the green stuff.
Right.
The green stuff. People are catching the green stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, we're gonna have to call it.
That's just in my mind.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to call it something. We're gonna come up with the jargon as we go here.
I don't know if you have any recommendations in the chat over here, you let us know. But don't flag us. Don't put the other stuff up there. So
maybe if I say it with an accent, maybe if I say the jab with an accent like that, maybe we're gonna talk about the jab. The jab. It won't get
jab.
The jab. I think what was kind of happening in the background here as we were working on this other stuff, and was like, what are we gonna talk about? What are we gonna do? And feeling so kind of drained and uninspired. And Drew and I were reflecting on why that is. Why are we drained and uninspired? And it's like, man, I never really wanted to talk about this. Never wanted to do an episode like this because I felt like this was a little bit of escapism. And we're not going to, we are living and breathing March 2020 onward. And so why talk about it on our broadcast? This is our escape from all that. So why talk about it? And also then selfishly, I want to pretend it's not affecting me. I want to pretend it's not real. I want to pretend it hasn't affected my life, but it really has. And this is one of those weeks where it leaves me uninspired and drained as to what to theologize about, what to do that about. And so we just thought, hey, let's come on here and be honest about that. And talk about how we've been handling it, how we've been, what we've seen, what God has been doing, in us and through us and things like that during this, and just be honest with all of you, and be honest with ourselves,
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's good. It's interesting because when things quiet down between you and I, because we chat back and forth and kind of, rant and throw this back and forth. When things quiet down, we're both kind of like, okay, probably stressful things are happening,
Yeah,
different stuff like
yeah,
that. So
exactly.
then
No,
this does
exactly.
becomes our slot where we just sort of like, have a bit of a yawn, as they say, a theological yawn. But we're gonna get real today. So we'll talk about some of the stuff we've been thinking about and that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really, the one this week is it's becoming apparent that it's possible that I could lose my job
Mm,
because I won't get the jab.
mm,
And I don't mind talking about why I won't get it, but th- it could happen.
mm,
It's maybe a few steps away, but my company is fully progressive. They're all in,
mm,
and
mm.
and so I work at home. I don't go into any offices, but I don't think that matters to them. I
That's
don't. I don't.
such a weird,
Okay.
like, it's like an image thing, I guess. Like, hey, this person represents us. Therefore, you need to do this or something like that.
It's. I think it's a virtue signaling numbers thing that they can put their vaccination rates. Oh, I said it. Uh, th- they can put their jab rates up on
The Jabrets.
marketing materials up on the socials
Mm,
that they can
mm,
say, hey, per the White House's recommendation, we've got the numbers,
mm,
and so look
mm,
how virtuous a company we are.
mm,
And they're doing that at the expense of the individual choices of their employees.
mm.
And I could have to look for employment elsewhere, and it kind of makes me want to look for employment elsewhere. And so it's weird. I'm reeling from that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
it's a weird place to be, and I had to. All of this stuff is out there, right? It's all out in the ether. But then when it comes home to roost, I had to mark myself with a scarlet letter with my company and report my status,
Hmm.
and then report whether I was going to get the jab or not.
Mm. And have you already sent out the email or whatever else to say, nope, and this is
I
why, or is
said
that like
no.
on the horizon? Yeah.
I said I'm not going to.
Mm,
And that's all I've heard about it for now.
mm,
But I have some inside baseball knowledge, and
mm,
some people in some areas of the company, my company's huge, but some people in some areas of the companies are very disdainful of any kind of attempt at religious exemption.
hmm,
Uh, I'm still hopeful. I still don't think that they're going to push this
mm. Right.
to people who work at home.
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting it's just an interesting time. All of this, like, it's very bizarre, very unusual.
No, no, because Andrew asked, did they test you? Did they test you extra often because of the Scarlet Letter? Uh, I work at home. Never had a test. Never got the swab.
Yeah.
Never. I've never had to do any of it.
Mm,
Uh, so no.
yeah.
But right, that's the proviso. That's supposedly you can. And what's crazy about it, and it's just what's so weird about it is that I feel like they've created a two-tier system, and it feels strange to be on the second tier. That I'm a second-class citizen because I haven't gotten this thing. And so even if they did extra testing, or the people of you out there who have to wear your mask because you don't have it, or because you're gonna have to do all the extra testing, like in the sports guys, for the NFL, they made it really over the top difficult to not get the jab, that you had to do all this extra testing and have all these extra protocols. They made it hurt if you didn't want to get it. And so it's the same thing, that you are kind of this second class citizen.
Mm, yeah. Rough stuff.
That's crazy.
Dang, David. Yeah. It's is affecting a lot of people. my own country that I live in New Zealand, we just got off I just got off a call with my coworkers. I work for a parachurch disciple making organization here. And all of us work among uni students, and up in Auckland has been in complete and total shutdown for, I think this is, by the end of this, it's going to be maybe 5 weeks or so. So they're really struggling, but God has been faithful, and there have been some really cool things that have been happening. These trying times have produced what seems to be a normalcy of meeting online and doing Zoom and maybe even interacting like this, with one another in online spaces and stuff. And so there's some really encouraging stuff happening there, but there's still a lot of suffering and uncertainty as well in that space. So, and we feel it here too. I mean, just this week is my first week back being able to do work properly, probably at like 75% power or 75%.
But I mean, is that
normalcy.
so? But okay, in your job though, one of the most powerful things you can do, and is meet with students face to face, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
How often do college age students have someone that sits there and just listens to them? Right.
Yeah.
Like how often?
Yeah.
How often does that happen? So how often do you that you're able to give them that gift, which is just one of the most amazing things you can do. So is like, if we're going to talk spiritual warfare about this, if you want to think about it on that level, isn't that, I mean, Satan would love that, right? That you're not able to reach out and touch anybody.
Right.
You're not able to give them that gift of being a listening ear, and you're not able to do that. To me, that's perfect of what he would want to happen.
Yeah. It's real challenging in that aspect. And I guess that brings me to the discussion of, I had to throw up a thumbnail real quick and stuff like that. And so what I was going to say in it was, when God doesn't seem to be working or something like that. And I thought, oh, that sounds kind of weird for your average, audience or whatever. And the thumbnail may be different by the time you're listening to this, because I threw that one together and I might end up changing it. But it says, when God seems absent. And I think, I've taken some notes here and things that we can talk about, but we've talked about previously on this podcast, the passage where Jesus is teaching us how to pray, and he says, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so that seems to implicitly acknowledge that there are certain things that God is wanting to happen on earth that aren't happening. And I posted some polls and kind of polled you personally, Eric, on this question earlier, either this week or last week, regarding, does God always get what he wants? So it's like two questions. Does God always get what he wants? And then, can God be hindered? And it was really interesting. If you want to join the Soteriology 101 discussion group that we're in, there's a poll up there on that subject. And it's interesting to see some of the nuance emerge on that. And so, regarding the enemy, I don't actually call him Satan, because Satan just means the adversary. As far as I can tell, he doesn't have a name. It's just describing his role. But so I just call him the enemy or the adversary or the accuser or whatever else. I don't dignify him with a name. And
he who shall not be named, for real.
Yeah. He who shall not be named, he who doesn't have a name, something like that. And so you think about this, and the enemy is at work. I mean, I was just reading earlier. It was actually in C.S. Lewis's Problem of Pain book, which I was thinking about. That was another episode idea I was thinking about potentially doing, but didn't get a chance to format. Was basically C.S. Lewis and free will. But in the Problem of Pain book, he briefly highlights how illness is sometimes attributed specifically to the enemy's activity. And so, who can say what's really happening? We don't have the access to the mind of God. No matter what your view is on divine providence, foreknowledge, and so on, you have to reckon with the fact that this is happening. And for whatever reason, God seems absent, or God is choosing not to intervene. I posted this. Maybe this can spawn some discussion here. I've been engaging in some little, tweets and different stuff, things that I've just been meditating on and thinking about. So this one says, this was an encouragement from a brother of mine who works with us here in student ministry, named Stuart. And I sort of adapted this based on something that he said in a catch up that we were having together online. And it says, "Thank you, Father, for the things that I can see and for the things that I may not be aware of and cannot see." And that was rooted in, you've heard me say, Eric, and I think you said as well before, we said in the debate that we did, is that God can do things.
Right.
And I think part of affirming that God can do things is that God is not always doing everything. So this tweet here is kind of a recognition that there are things that you're doing, Lord, Father, that we can see, and there are things that you're doing that we can't see, but we acknowledge that you're not doing everything, and that probably there are a lot of things that you might desire to be different. That feels like an uncontroversial statement to me based on what we just talked about earlier, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven and stuff like that. But yeah.
That I find myself really in I've yearned for justice in abstract terms on injustices that I see. But it was always pretty external. But this one is attempting to be perpetrated upon me and upon all of you out there, because here's what it is. Everyone, and you'll know what I mean when I say everyone. Everyone that has been all in on this since March 2020 has done the whole time is lie. It's just all the mountain of lies. It's almost dizzying to try to keep up with all of them. And then the incompetence that leads to, they locked people in their homes, they stole their businesses, they took people's health care away. You couldn't get any medical procedures done. If you had heart disease, too bad. You have a mental illness, you're in drug addiction counseling, too bad. See ya. We're canceling all of those things. Good luck out there by yourself with your addiction. Churches capitulated, and the people who relied on churches for healthy interactions, they're grieving a lost spouse, grieving broken family systems. The church was a healthy, safe place for them. They went there to help with their addictions. The church just abandoned them by and large. And I'm just yearning for justice. And then that's all kind of external. Those things were happening to me too, a little bit tangentially. I chose to move halfway across the country in the middle of it, and did that to myself and did that to my family. And we incurred some suffering based on that choice, in conjunction with how governments and companies were responding to March 2020. But now what we have a situation that this injustice, they want everyone, and they are going to use every lever of power over you to and so mental health skyrockets, suicide rates skyrocket. Exactly. Can't talk about it though. Be careful. There's only one type of death we can talk about. that now they want you to get an experimental gene therapy, and they're going to take away your job if you don't get it. They're going to make it so you can't fly or can't go to the grocery store without getting experimental gene therapy. And this experimental gene therapy, this particular jab is the first of its kind, and every other jab before it has been injecting you with a foreign substance, and it was more of an inert foreign substance that would trigger
like live green stuff.
Yeah, it was right, live green stuff to get your immune response. This one is the first that has ever been approved for humans to do what it does. And what it does is it uses mRNA to tell your genes to produce the foreign entity, to produce the green stuff. It tells your cells to produce the green stuff. And, if this kind of thing is going to be used on humans, we should have a robust, sensible, long-term dialogue about this in this country, not under an emergency proviso where it's rushed through everything. And then someone who is supposed to be overseeing all of this has to, just to be able to push it through, has to change the definition of the word vaccine. A vaccine used to be something that provides immunity. Now it just changed all quietly in the background to be something that produces an immune response. And so so I'm yearning for justice here. I'm yearning for truth here. And it's crazy making. And it does. It makes me think like, Lord, where are you in all of this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, we've said previously, God either determines or permits everything that comes to pass. The mere two statements that God is omnipotent and God is omnipresent. God sees what's happening and then chooses not to intervene, is a challenge.
It is.
And I did want to acknowledge, Hope said something in here about the freedoms being specifically American issues and stuff. I think that, it's interesting. Maybe I don't want to chase that rabbit trail just yet.
But it's fair. It's a fair point. But we're just talking about the moral value of a government entity being able to tell you what to do. And there are things that we have as a society that have agreed that the government can tell us what to do. There's agreements that we make and cost benefit analysis and compromises and we do that. Those are things that we do, but this isn't happening like that. That's not how this is going down.
Yeah. I mean, as an example for this, just recently when we were in lockdown, I don't live in the U.S. I live in New Zealand. So when everything was shut down a couple weeks ago here in Palme, my daughter was in hospital, and basically I was not. Parents in general that were in the children's ward were not. You were permitted one parent. So one parent was not permitted essentially at the hospital to see their child because reasons.
It's cruelty. It's cruelty.
And to me, that's at what stage are we getting into human rights violations and stuff like that? Is a question that I think we should be asking, and we shouldn't have our fingers in our ears and just say, let's kind of get along and stuff like that. I admit that culturally, America does buck significantly against those things. And some of these conversations that we've been having via being consultants recently, this has come up in conversation just about how people, especially in the Southeast, would rather die than get the jab and stuff. And so that's a real cultural reality, a real mindset difference, I think, that, can be acknowledged and stuff. But I guess I wanted to talk about the kind of the subject of God can do things. And I have a few tweets and a few things up here that I'd have as sort of springboard talking points. But before we go there, actually, if you're listening to us on audio and post, this won't make sense to you. But if you're listening to us now on YouTube and you're watching us, just direct your attention up. We have something for you, and this is a new thing, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, that's pretty cool. It's called a bumper,
Awesome.
which is basically to get you to I don't know, like pay attention, something interactive with. By the way, it helps us if you like and share these things. And one thing that I wanted to say before we get back on topic is I'd be interested if you enjoy this content and you're familiar with us, what is your favorite episode to send to someone to introduce them to us and our content? So let us know in the comments below or in the live chat here, and we'd appreciate that. But I'm going to throw this tweet up here and we're going to talk about it. This is an interesting. So this is a tweet from a guy named Chris. I won't say his last name, I guess, because that's not public in the tweet, but he is pretty public personality on Facebook. And he wrote, if I weren't a Calvinist, I'd be worried. And so what he was kind of claiming implicitly there is that if he didn't have his unique view of divine providence, which is determinism or compatibilism, I'll link over here and post our episode where we do an intro to kind of talk about what that is and what that looks like. But he was saying this, and you'll notice just above it, I wrote, so I responded to this and just wrote, if I didn't believe in free will, I'd be worried. So he wrote, if I weren't a Calvinist, I'd be worried. Being, if I didn't believe that everything was immutably predestined to the glory of God, I'd be worried. And I wrote that if I didn't believe in free will, I'd be worried.
Right, exactly. If I thought that God was actually doing all of this.
Yeah. And that, somehow it reminds me of a song that I enjoy, that it's a band called Showbread. So they're no longer together, I think, but it's headed up by a guy named Josh. His pseudonym is Josh Porter. I think it's Josh Porter. He's also pastoring a church up in Seattle, I think it is. And one of the lyrics of the songs is, do you have a hand in this? Do you really have a hand in this? And he's talking about evils, and does God have a hand in it? I think it was called Dear John Piper, I think is the name of the song. If you want to check it out, it's a niche genre, lots of yelling and metal guitar, but I love them lyrically. It's very thoughtful. Oh yeah, Caleb says love Showbread. They're really good. I love those guys.
I love the name, the spelling change, Showbread. I love that.
Yeah. And but yeah, I mean, like I would be worried if I didn't believe in free will. Like,
right.
I think that there's questions about the origins of the green stuff that maybe God didn't want to come to pass, and he prevented to come to pass. And maybe, and I said this to a friend of mine just yesterday, and I don't know what you think about this, Eric. In chat, you can let me know if this is controversial too. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I won't say that. That might be a little bit insensitive on a live thing. We're going to move on. We're going to move on.
You're censoring yourself live. It's like you're mature.
Yeah. That was some fortunate wisdom that I gained there in a moment. So Zach asked this question: is it our opinions that God sent the coronavirus?
My opinion that somebody created it in a lab.
Dag nabbit. Also, Zach made me say it.
Now we're gonna.
We can't know the. I mean, we can't know the mind of God. So maybe, but maybe he didn't. And that was my point earlier, Zach. You might just be tuning in. Is that being thankful for the things that God is doing, and being thankful for the things that God is doing that we can't see, is an acknowledgement that God isn't doing everything. That not everything, God doesn't have his hand in everything. In the sense of, he permits things, but he's not causing everything, I guess, to be more philosophically specific. So, but yeah.
It was.
Created. Look who's tuning in.
Yes.
Chris, we were just talking about your tweet. It looks like maybe somebody let you know about that. And how we'd be worried if free will were not true as well.
Yeah.
So
if God was doing all of this and all of this injustice was God's ultimate decision, I'd be a lot more worried. It should. I mean, that's right. From across the magic of the interwebs.
So did someone send this to you, or did you just straight up, like, your ears are burning? I gotta know. Is this divine providence? Okay. Well, that explains things. That explains things.
That's always trying to stir it up.
Yeah, got it. Did I click that? I didn't mean to click that. So what else do we have to say here? Let me look back at my notes here. So I also asked in the group that the question that I asked you guys earlier is, like, if you were to introduce someone to our content, what would you send them? To introduce them to us and so on. And a handful of people have said that they really like the prayer episode, which was, I think, probably our personal favorite. Eric, do you agree that was probably one of your favorites?
Yes.
And initially, it's funny because it was one of our lesser viewed videos. Yeah, Chris, no beef. It's all good. I mean, it's just brotherly discussion. I thought it was interesting. If you go to my tweet too, you'll see that Chris saw that I posted that, and it was just like cute. So I appreciated that. I thought that was, to be
fair, it was cute.
It was tongue in cheek. It was like, let me just see I'm just going to see what happens here. But yeah, plagiarism. So that was my thing.
What's up, Amos?
Yo, what's happening? And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, about the prayers and what episode you would send someone. So tell me if you think, if the audience in the comments after you listen to this, I'm going to put this up on the screen. This is from a Bible plan that my church has invited people into to do, like, online or whatever, you can read, and it's got, like, devotion. I think it's like a 7-day Bible plan called Dangerous Prayers. And this was a statement from the reading. I think this was yesterday, because I think we're on day 2, but it says, your prayers matter. How you pray matters. What you pray matters. Your prayers move God. I'm surprised that he didn't have, like, the clapping emojis between them. That seems like a thing that you do. Maybe he's not a millennial or Gen Z enough for that. I think it's by Craig Rochelle. What is this a controversial statement to you guys, that our prayers move God, that things happen that would not have happened had we not prayed? Is that controversial to you? You let me know. I think it is, and I think it's a real challenge for us to pray. As a for instance, on this point, speaking of, so for those of you that are just tuning in, we're having some musings, some reflections on God's providence from 2020, March 2020 and onwards. with all of these trying times that we've been facing. And I was hearing about things that are happening across the ditch from us and the country next door, things that are happening back home. I mean, I kind of have two homes now, New Zealand and the US. And just really like, man, this is like rough, serious stuff. I mean, like what you've shared, Eric. The tragic part about this is that it does become political. And I wish that it didn't. I wish that we could just sort of be grieved together and agree that this isn't a good thing. Unfortunately, it's not. But, you know, and I was just really grieved by this. And I was reminded of the importance of prayer. And I posted this passage from Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 30. It says, where God searched for a man among the people who would repair the wall and stand in the gap before me on behalf of the land so that I might not destroy it, but I found no one. So this is generally understood as a person, a righteous person who would stand up and intercede, stand in the gap between God and the destruction of the people, and that he found no one. And so then he destroyed it, destroyed Israel, brought destruction. And so the implication seems to be from this that if someone had stood up, that he would not have. And I felt, you know, kind of challenged and motivated by this. And you'll see this. You can go to our Facebook page, or I think it's on Instagram as well. And I put that image up there, and I just said, pray. with a link to our, it has like a little finger with a link to our Does Prayer Change God's Mind episode. So, yeah, I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge to all of us to really pray. I don't know if you think that that's controversial. We've received a lot of good feedback from people on that episode. So this is your exhortation, your encouragement. I'm trying to encourage myself to do this. I'm trying to like, okay, Drew, don't just say this, actually do it, right? But like pray for the world, pray for your friends.
No, one of the great blessings in all of this is that where we moved and the church that we go to is very much like pre-2020 life, and they aren't overly concerned about changing all of the things. And there's some things that they've changed, but you go there and it's not reminders everywhere of March 2020 onward. And we just started a life group in our home. And so we've got, one couple coming, we've got a few more that we want to invite, a few more that we've met, but we're new. And so it'll take some time, but it was great to pray with that couple yesterday and just dive into some of those things that provide rest and provide balance, and be able to do what you can. I feel very blessed by God's providence to have left when we did, and to be in an area that you could basically do what you want, and be as concerned about this or not as you want. And I think it also has forced me to, so even though I yearn for justice and I can pray for justice, I can't change everything in the world.
Sure.
I can't. And one of the things that Jordan Peterson said that has always stuck with me is like, before you go change the world, clean your room. And, take care. What does mean is take care of what you have responsibility over, what you have that in your sphere of influence, and be a good steward of that. And I think I related it. It caused me to think of the biblical metaphor of stewardship and what that would look like. And so what I've been doing, and if we're talking about, how do we get, if we're not going to be a doom and gloom podcast, a doom and gloom episode, and we want to talk about some of those things that, what can you do? Pray. Your prayers move God. Seems uncontroversial to me. And what else can you do? And so what I've been able to do, going to school for years, going to college for years, especially seminary, where you have to read for homework constantly. kind of kills the love of reading for,
yeah.
kind of, and so since I graduated, I'm like, never reading again. Never reading. Yeah. I'm done. But that has, I've been really trying to rekindle the love of reading just for the sake of reading. And so I got some of my books here that I've been reading and recommend for all of you. Got some different genres here. I've got 3 really different genres here. So if one of these will get somebody. I dove into some Sanderson, the fantasy author.
Oh yeah.
I kept hearing about him. I did Hobbes first, Robin Hobbes, the Assassin trilogy, which was amazing. But this is good so far. It's huge. So I'm taking a break. Look at that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
what is happening here? But getting into Sanderson, just got these from the library. I haven't started this one yet. Earlier, I read Sense and Sensibility with Austin. Hadn't actually read that. And I think I've read one of Austin's. I know. But Jane Austen, I got Northanger Abbey. So got to do Northanger Abbey. They didn't have Pride and Prejudice. Otherwise I did that. So I did Sense. I was looking for Pride and Prejudice. They didn't have it at the library. So I got Northanger Abbey and I haven't dove in yet, but I really recommend Jane Austen. It sounds cliche, but she just writes people so well, and sucks you in. And then the one that I actually got into that I'm obsessed with that I can't put down right now is this one. Yeah. Army of Dawn.
I think it's very telling that all of the books that you're into right now are fiction, right?
For real? No, I mean that I'm doing that on purpose.
Yeah,
I'm doing that on purpose. Well, this is like historic. This is okay. Real. He's writing it narratively though. It's not. He's writing a narrative. He's won a Pulitzer for it. I got to be honest with you. I don't know how you win a Pulitzer. I don't understand that. People like your book and you win a Pulitzer. I don't know, but it's fascinating. It's about the invasion of North Africa. I knew nothing about it. It's amazing. So I recommend that. It's by Rick Atkinson.
Cool.
Cool. So that's what I've been doing is rekindling my love of reading and sitting back with a nice cold glass of milk, like the old man I am.
Amazing.
And doing some of that to recharge.
Yeah, I've been trying to do the same. Back when we took our little bit of a break, it was like also a theology break for me. So I was like, right. No theology books, not even going to read, Problem of Pain, because that's kind of philosophical, theologically minded as well and stuff. And so I've been trying to get to read through Dune on audiobook in preparation for the movie that's going to release next month, which hopefully Hollywood doesn't ruin it.
No, it looks so good. It can't be. It's Rodriguez. What's his name? The guy who did.
You watch the drinkers take on it, and then you let me know. Not safe for work warning with.
I know that the drinker is gospel, but it's just it's the guy who did Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner, and.
Yeah, but it's we'll see. I'm like holding my breath a little bit for it, and I've not read Dune before, right? This is my first time reading through it. And by the way, we talked about this with the episode about me and subtitles. I think that most people are not genuinely visual people. I think I'm actually genuinely a visual learner because I see in subtitles. And when I listen to an audio book, especially something like Dune, you hear these names and these things. And I'm just like, what? I need to see that word. Like I need to be able to see that word to know what he's saying. Like it's just really hard to follow.
Freak. You're an absolute freak.
I will say to your objection about the fact that you're not watching the movie because you're reading the subtitles, I know that I don't only read the subtitles. I use it as like a reference, like a comfort, I didn't quite, okay, that's what he said. Because just the other night we were watching something with subtitles on it and I had to turn it up. So if I was reading the subtitles, then I wouldn't feel the need to turn it up, right? Because I couldn't hear what they were saying. So I'm not just.
You can try to justify yourself all you want, whatever excuses you want to. No, but I'm with you. I agree with you though that I'm more of an analog guy, right? Like these are. I'm not saying I'm reading on Kindle. I've never owned a Kindle on purpose.
Oh, I love that. I love Kindle. Don't get me wrong. That's visual.
Get off my lawn.
Right here. Yeah.
Get off my lawn.
Well, I chose the Kindle strategically because I knew that I would likely be overseas and not be able to carry my library with me. So it kind of felt like a choice that was forced on me. But now that I've got some roots down, you can see the library is building. There's a Red Cross bookshop that's like walking distance from here that has used books and stuff. It's, boy, you better believe it. Back on some theological topics here, I thought I would just acknowledge some comments here that were relevant to what we were talking about. So Jesse, I don't know how to say your last name. In Spanish, we would say Mejer. I don't know how that, he says, so like when Abraham intercedes for Lot and others living in Sodom, that's a really interesting story. And it's like Abraham negotiates God down, much like Moses negotiates God out of destroying the Israelites. So this is back to the prayer and providence and our prayers moving God subject. And I'm not going to click on it here because he's using some of the forbidden words. Is Zach's question. He says, so would you or could you connect the green stuff with the Assyrian attack of Israel in Isaiah 10, that God was judging Israel and the king of Assyria had evil intentions? Yes. So this is a fantastic way of saying what I was going to say earlier a little bit less sensitively, is that we don't have the access to the mind of God. And God could very well be using this to bring judgment on the world. I mean, sure. We are sinners. We deserve the wrath of God, the punishment of God. By the grace of God, we've been saved through faith. And precious in the sight of the Lord are the death of his saints. We grieve for those of us who remain, but we don't grieve as those who have no hope. Just recently, there was a popular speaker apologist named Bob Enyart. I'm not sure. I think that's how you say his name. He's an open theist guy, but he recently passed away from the green stuff, from catching that. And we grieve, but we know as Christians that he's with the Lord. Whatever that looks like, I think is sort of confusing because the Bible doesn't seem to, isn't super clear on that. But it is clear about the resurrection and the hope that we have of that, of living with God forever in the resurrected age.
There's one that I wanted to do.
Yep, go for it.
A little bit way back. Hope asked, my point is that some of these issues that are being heralded as persecution, I would rate some not all, are just seem to be issues of privilege and not real issues of immorality or persecution. Well, you haven't heard me use the word persecution. I try to stay away from, if people haven't noticed this, I try to stay away from overly spiritual language. That stuff is boring to me, and it clouds. It comes with all kinds of baggage. I try not to use it. So persecution, whatever but immoral. Yeah, I definitely think it's immoral. And when you say privilege, I absolutely acknowledge what a privilege the Bill of Rights is, what a privilege it is to have freedom of religion and freedom of speech and these freedoms that we have. That other countries don't have them is kind of like, that's what makes us better. Sorry, I understand how that comes off. I understand what that sounds like, but I think that the Bill of Rights is better than not having a Bill of Rights. America has its major problems, no doubt. We just abandoned hundreds of thousands of Afghans to the Taliban because we're cowards. Like, we've got problems for sure. But the Bill of Rights ain't one of them. And we should be, it is immoral for the government to try to use levers of power to force you to put a foreign substance in your body. It just is. And there are deals you can make as a society, agreements you can make as a society, where you do that a little bit, where you agree to some of these restrictions or some of these mandates, entry costs into sending your kid to school, or entry costs. We've agreed that employers can check it to see if you're a felon. Employers can check to see if you're on drugs. We've agreed to some of that because we think that the benefit outweighs the cost. But we haven't had any of those discussions with this green stuff. We haven't been allowed to have it. All of it's been suppressed, and all of it's just being mandated. So, if eventually it gets to the place where we develop something that is acceptable to most people, and we have a republic, as a republic, we come to agreement on how to deal with it. That's a different thing than you better do it or you're fired.
Right. Yeah. On a less serious note, Ezekiel, get behind me, Satan.
Look, Ezekiel, just you're speaking the truth, and don't let the persecution.
For our audio listeners, this is a comment that says subtitles are the worst, and I say, get behind me. I don't have time for that negativity in my life.
Amen.
I wanted to.
It was so the it said the word. Said the word. I can't show it. It says the word. Oh no, I keep showing it. Yes, the jab was developed at the very least using that to test, using fetal cells to test. And so there are legitimate religious, and I understand that some Christians don't feel this way. Don't feel that strongly about it. There are things that I watch. There are things that I watch where people, there are Christians that I respect that say, like, we are boycotting Disney because of Disney's secular humanism. And I go, awesome. I respect that. That's great. That ain't me. My kids watch Disney. We're, I hope, discerning about what they watch. We're never watching Cruella or anything like that. But some people have other convictions, and that's fine with me. The entire point is that you get to have your own convictions.
Sorry, I'm derailing us into non-serious stuff here again. So, I clicked the wrong comment. Actually, this was the one that I meant to put up here. Ezekiel says it's a consistent struggle between my wife and I. Team Eric all the way.
Fist bump.
Kirsty has acquiesced, so she knows that I'm deaf and that I need the subtitles.
Okay, but all right. Caveat, Ezekiel. I want to know if this is acceptable. And Drew, you let me know if I'm a hypocrite or not.
Okay. Yeah.
Caveat is I will totally watch like a German show like Dark that has subtitles.
Right. Sure.
And I want to watch that, but the subtitles annoy my wife, and she won't watch shows like that with me.
So she wants to put it in the English dub, and
but but am I a hypocrite if I hate English dub? I think that's terrible. I'd rather watch.
No, I think that
English dub is terrible.
For me personally, they do a really good job of dubbing that show in particular, actually. But I've seen the first 2 seasons. I haven't seen the third one. But I like hearing people's authentic. I mean, I'm a language guy, so I just like hearing languages, and I like hearing it come from their mouth. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's my caveat is if it's in another language, I want to hear the language and I want to read the subtitles. That goes for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That goes for anything.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about this sort of on the subject of divine providence. And Eric, you were saying, what was it that you said? You said that earlier that you didn't really like to use spiritual language. And I think a lot of people repeat these phrases that sound real spiritual and pious. And then you think about them for a little bit and it's like, what do you mean by that? Is that really true?
Right.
For instance, God is in control, brother, stuff like that. But here's an example. Here's a practical, can you guys see that? Yeah. So this is a post that I shared on our Provisionist Perspective Facebook page. And it says, so here you can see the meme that this person created. So this is a mom who has a page called Preemiehood. She's a Christian. She's got, 28,000 people like this page. She's got a tremendous amount of influence. And I'm not trying to dog on her here or anything like that. Kirsty and I have experienced this. So she writes, sometimes people tried to comfort me with, so this is speaking of her premature experience with her child. Sometimes people tried to comfort me with, it's according to God's plan. Most of the time, I took comfort in that. But there was this other part of me that thought, and then she says, one, like that this is basically what she's saying maybe is in the mind of God on this issue. Like, one, create universe. Two, give Sarah a traumatic birth, a pint-sized preemie, which we had, PTSD, agreed, got it. And heck, why not some crippling anxiety to really push her over the edge? And then she wrote, this is her caption here: sometimes I just didn't want to hear things like this, or everything happens for a reason, and so on. It's not that I don't believe it. Truly I do. But on especially hard days, I just got angry and didn't want to hear it. And this deserves some nuance and some unpacking. But I commented here and shared this, that my wife and I had a micro preemie last year. So she was 1 pound, 1.5 ounces, and 525 grams for those of you who are listening to do the metric system. And so I said, my wife and I had a micro preemie last year. She follows this page from a Christian preemie mom. This is where lots of normie Christians are harmfully influenced by determinism, i.e. everything that happens is part of God's plan. It's according to God's plan. She wrote down here, everything happens for a reason. And then I just said, pray for this mom and others like her. You can see, I guess her name is Sarah. This is why promoting good, true theology and refuting bad theology matters.
Amen.
Because, and I get it. People just want to say something to you that's comforting, right? Well, just, you got to trust that God's in control. He's not taken by surprise by all of this. Everything happens for a reason. But we need to be telling people the truth when we speak to them. And we need to avoid empty spiritual platitudes that might not be true, or might be true, but require a lot of nuance. And then you inadvertently communicate something to them that isn't true.
Yeah. Am I saying this to make myself feel better because I'm saying something spiritual, or am I actually saying something of value to this person, or
right, right. And it's interesting on that subject. I've mentioned this previously on the podcast, I think, but there was a brother who's actually here in Palmy. We've become friends. Not really hung out too much one-on-one, but we've exchanged messages and stuff. And he and his wife came to Wellington a couple of months after we did with a micro preemie as well. And he was of the Reformed persuasion at the time. I'm not going to say his name or anything like that because I'm not sure that he's particularly public with this yet. He was of the Reformed persuasion at the time, and I sent him a few of our episodes and a few of Leighton's episodes and got nothing from him, because I was really quite grieved in thinking, much like this woman has posted here, that he might be thinking God did this and wanted this to happen. And I don't know. It's a very difficult experience. It's hard to describe in words. You have kind of like a brotherhood of people with preemies when you
because they actually do understand, unlike anybody else who says I understand.
Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah. And so it's funny. I sent him a few episodes. I didn't get much interaction from him at all. But then he ended up messaging me back at some stage and basically being like, hey, listen, actually, I really appreciate you sending me this stuff. I've been wrestling with a lot of these things, and I can't embrace determinism anymore. And I think that basically, I think provisionism is true and what you guys saying, and I appreciate everything that you do. And I prayed for them lots, because I was just really like, man, this is just hard, period, full stop. And it's got to make it so much harder. I mean, Brother Chris, he said earlier that he'd be worried if if I weren't Calvinist, I'd be worried. I worry for people who are Calvinists in situations like that.
and actual suffering.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know how you reconcile these thoughts in your mind, how you deal with this and stuff like that. And again, I think that we all face the challenge of God chooses not to intervene, right? Every Christian who doesn't affirm meticulous divine providence, determinism, and so on, has to wrestle with that. But that's a radically different question from God's behind this,
Yeah.
So yeah.
I want to acknowledge somebody here in the comments, and I just want to acknowledge it for the just a massive amount of game he must have. So Andrew was talking about how he met his wife. He met his wife on chess.com because they're both pretty good chess players. So he plays a woman on chess.com and then pulls her, and now they're married. I mean, the amount of capital G, lowercase chess game he's got, and then capital G game he's got. I mean, you should teach lessons, brother Andrew.
You could do seminars on this. I think
that is ridiculous. Chess.com. How teach the single young men your ways?
Yeah. I met my wife online as well, and it's interesting because we were I won't say the name of the website and all of that. It's fine. It's like a Christian website and stuff like that, but for different reasons. You can PM me, ask me about it. But and I messaged her because it asks you to enter in your first name and your last name and stuff like that, right? And so because I'm the analytic, precise person, I always write James as my first name, with even though nobody calls me that, because I'm like, well, this is my first name, this is what they want, right? Like so I put that on forums and stuff, but then inevitably, like, I messaged her and it was like James M, and then I was like, oh, hey, this is me, and she was like, oh, James, I like that name, and then she read the bottom and I like signed it Drew, and she was like, don't like it. No, I like James better. No, that's not a huge fan of Drew. So she initially liked the name James much better.
Okay, Andrew, I know, because you're playing chess. I understand, Andrew. You're not a ladies' man because you're playing chess. I get it. But still, you had the game.
Worked. It worked.
I mean, you got to go with what you're working with, and you did it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Oh, I didn't do that.
Yeah, so Zach says this: standing on the promises of God and His Word are our hope and comfort during trying times. Wholeheartedly agree. But I think that there are beliefs that Christians hold to that are not biblical, that can undermine their confidence in God's promises and His Word, or that are at odds with His Word, with claims in His Word. And that's kind of what I'm pushing back against. But yeah, wholeheartedly agree. I mean, there's a lot of promises that we stand on. I mean, there's a prayer, we call it Phoebe's prayer. I think it's in Psalm 71. And it talks about you took me from my mother's womb, and from my mother's womb I leaned on you from birth, and stuff like that. And so Phoebe she had an emergency C-section. So she was taken from her mother's womb, and so that spoke to us quite loudly and speaks to the ministering, poetic nature of the Psalms, as well as how we shouldn't make dogmatic theological claims from them, because people like to take Psalm 51 and say, I was conceived in iniquity, and say, see, this means that everybody's born guilty. But then Psalm 71 says things like, I leaned on you from birth. And it's like, nah. Seems like a little bit of a double standard.
Yeah, and what's been comforting to me has been my reading through 1 Corinthians that I've been able to continue doing. That, in those wisdom sections, this is the way things are supposed to be. That it isn't. I'm not crazy for looking at the world and going, wait a minute, how are things this way? This is so unwise. This isn't wise. The wisdom actually looks like this, and yet people think it looks like this, and this discontent with how the way structures are run, that Christians ought to be seen as turning the wisdom on its head, and we aren't to. People who run these structures and run these systems will look at Christians as, what are those guys doing? The things they do are so strange, and it should feel that way. It should feel that way. And so that brings me some comfort that even though that Christians being lauded in the public square happen still, and in the past happened a lot, we're a Christian nation and all that. That's the exception, not the rule.
I want to take Zach's question right here, where he says, "Could you apply Romans 8:28 in a context like this?" Absolutely. God works in all things for the good of those who love Him, for those who are called according to His purpose. But God doesn't cause everything. Like God's hand isn't behind everything. So God can redeem circumstances and things that you go through and use them for your sanctification, your spiritual growth. Trials produce perseverance, and so on. But that's a different claim from determinism. And then that's obviously like an exegetical conversation we can have about Romans 8:28 and what it means or what it doesn't mean. But I don't think that Romans 8:28 means determinism. And Fishy Smith says, I was wondering, do you think God feels pain, suffers 100% because of passages like this? And don't grieve God's Spirit. You are sealed by Him for the day of redemption. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 30. So in my mind, every time we sin, we grieve God, and God suffers that. Some people don't believe that God somehow becomes not God if He can suffer pain and regret and things like that. But I think the scriptures are clear. This is just one passage that we're looking at here, but that God does grieve. And I think you look at the state of the world and you look at people perishing because of the green stuff and all the stuff that's happening. And yeah, God grieves, 100%. Yeah. So thanks, Daniel. Well explained, Drew. Yeah, and then Jordan says it means to make sad. So to grieve someone means to make them sad. There's a passage in Genesis 6. Do with this what you will. Maybe this is controversial, where God grieves that He made man because they had become so evil. So in that context, He's like, wow, okay. This is bad. I'm going to do a soft reboot, Noah. I'm going to start over with you. I'm just going to kill everyone. But He grieves specifically that. Here, I'll show it to you, Eric, if you want to. If there's anything in the comments that you want to cover or whatever. Oh, I've got to.
I think, one of the other aspects of this that grieves me is that how much this has changed relationships, that the division that I think all of you probably have experienced since March 2020 among people who you used to be close with, or we had this, the most hurtful place for this. Like we have family members who have gotten the jab and hasn't gotten the jab, and that's fine. Like we don't not get along with them just because they got the jab or whatever. But it was family friends who we were close with before that live out here, and they're Chris, I'll get right on that. We'll repeat everything just for you, sure. That lived out here, but basically because of everything, I don't think that they're ever really going to see us again. And they have this beautiful home down in Dallas, and it would have been a little slice of home because I've known them my whole life. It would have been, some small comforts during our really difficult seasons here, and but it's probably not going to happen, and it really does make me sad. So,
and I think that's the power of God, the theological comforting strength of the belief of the true belief that God grieves, is that He can grieve with us as opposed to a completely immovable, static God, which Ezekiel has commented here about classical theism in the comments. And Chris, you'll be happy to know where we're going next with this. Maybe everyone else won't. I've never thought that this was controversial, but apparently it is. So I'm just going to put it up on the screen. This is what we were talking about with the whole grieving aspect, is that it says, when the Lord saw that human wickedness was widespread on the earth, and that every inclination of the human mind was nothing but evil all the time, the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth and was deeply grieved. So say what you want to say theologically about this passage, how you want to unpack this, and so on. But it seems clear to me that this is a passage about God grieving, and that it would be violence to the text, to the clear revelation of the text here, to say that this is, well, he's not really grieving, because if he were grieving, that would mean that he goes from this state to this state, and there can't be any change in God. And so really this is just God speaking in a way that we understand, right? So God is communicating something to us that if we believed at face value wouldn't be true. And yet he could have used different words, like the words that you're using to describe him, and for some reason chose not to, and chose to say that he grieves. I hope that you see the problem with that. Not everyone does. So yeah. Thanks, Zach. He says, I appreciate you guys. Your theology is questionable, in my opinion, but I genuinely love you, brothers. Pray God works out some of our differences over time. Until then, let's seek the Lord together. This is why we like you, Zach. This is why we keep you on. This is why you're on an episode. Because,
well, we like Zach because he'll be a provisionist soon.
He seems like a truth seeker, and he's one of the few guys that is really seeking to understand and look at the points of nuance and the points of contention and stuff like that, and have a dialogue. And I appreciate that. And I would like to think that I strive to be the same for and in conversations with my Calvinistic brethren. I may not always succeed at that, but I feel like I understand their views very well, and that's why I reject them. I found something that I think is theologically more exegetically and theologically sound. And that's why I believe what I believe. Can you say the same? Can you say the same, that you've researched our views and you understand our view on Romans 9 or Ephesians 1 or whatever else, and that you know why you reject it? I would challenge you to do that. So, but yeah. So this is where I throw up the bumper again, just to kill the dead silence, right? Because we're kind of running out of things to say.
Yeah, I mean, any questions for any? I don't know, any statements for the good of the cause, or appreciate you guys sticking with us through this. And I like having the freedom to have these sort of honest conversations about where we are with things. And
for sure,
yeah, we probably won't do this very often, but it's nice to know that we can.
Right. I appreciate your name, Hannah Banana. Something the attribute of immutability goes against God as being relatable. I don't find this to be true in the least. God is wholly other than. So
because wholly other than, how is he relatable?
I like your name. I disagree with what you've said, and that's okay. I think, a friend of mine and I were having a conversation about this, and the fact that God is so completely beyond our understanding that we have to couch him in human language. But then I think that the strange thing to me about that claim is that God is supremely wise and has access to lots of different words. And you've come up with a lot of words to describe him in this way of immutable and, so on and so forth. Why couldn't he just use those words in the Bible? like, you know what I'm saying? If God says he grieves, it can't mean he does not grieve. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't understand how, look at this. He says, yes, God will soon provide y'all clearer understanding. And then Zach says, so I'm partially a provisionist.
I got it. I'm with it. I like that. I like that.
No, not even remotely, Hannah. We're not reformed. Well, it depends on what you mean by reformed, right? Like they're reformed Arminians, reformed Calvinists.
Even a little bit.
Yeah. If you say, like, do you affirm the solas? Like, I mean, I would say that I do. Maybe people would be like, nah, Drew, you don't. You actually don't affirm the soul. I'm fine with that. Show me in blue or black letter why I'm wrong, and we can have a conversation about it.
Red or black?
Yeah. So appreciate you, Ezekiel. Y'all are heretics. Somebody had to say it in this episode. I'm a revisionist, by the way. Yeah. What are you gonna say, Eric? Anything?
Just the more I get called a heretic, the more that I know that I'm saying the good things, saying the right things, making good arguments.
Imagine timeless attorney having to watch an Amy Schumer stand up routine. As a side note, and Eric and I disagree on this. The time and God thing. I'm just going to put this out into the ether, and we're not going to, talk about this and unpack this maybe for another episode. But the time and God thing is a more important issue, I think, than people give it credit for. And I think, including myself, up until recent years, just hadn't given it any thought at all. So, yeah, timeless Amy Schumer sounds like eternal conscious torment. Yeah,
that'd be awful.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we're running down here, running out of things to talk about. I mean, I feel like we could probably ramble on about something, but we just wanted to get on here and kind of reflect on some things that we've been thinking about and talking about. Hopefully it stimulated some thinking in you. Hopefully it's been of some encouragement or comfort to you. Hopefully it wasn't too gloom and doom and stuff like that. We had fun. We appreciate you guys' interaction here and joining us. And again, let us know in the comments what you think is your favorite episode to send to someone to introduce to people who hadn't heard of us before. I'm interested because I'm often wondering, would this be a turnoff to hear, the starter episode as us refuting R.C. Sproul or John MacArthur or whatever else, and for some people, maybe that's like interesting, that's what gets them hooked in.
Right.
But yeah. Eric, any closing thoughts?
It's right.
It increases my power.
My hair gets
over 9,000.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And we're going to try by the way, that little bumper that we had was done by Caleb, and we appreciate, he's done our intro. He's done the bumper. He's going to do this thing that I'm going to throw up here in just a second. And we're not yet paying him for any of his services. He's graciously providing them for us free of charge. But I would like to chuck him every now and then a koha, as they say here in New Zealand, which is like a gift, for like, hey, thank you. We appreciate you and stuff like that. And if we increase our support, maybe we'll be able to do some more things and get some more digital action going, because this is far beyond our level of expertise. The stuff
my goodness.
Here, which we really appreciate. But so without further ado, I guess that's all we have for today. Pray.
Appreciate
pray
y'all.
for the world. Pray for your friends.
Go read a book.
That too.